if you'd like to put your name in the chat where you're joining us from, you are most welcome. So I'm just going to be introducing our two lovely speakers today. So first of all, we're going to hear from Briony. And so Briony Cavallaro is a digital archives assistant at the State Library of New South Wales. She recently graduated with her Masters of Information Studies from Charles Sturt University and is a 2026 George Alexander Foundation Fellow with her fellowship addressing the challenge of preserving born digital cultural heritage stored on obsolete carriers such as floppy disks and CDs. Briony is passionate about digital archives and finding long-term solutions for digital obsolescence. And secondly, today we'll be hearing from Kathryn Lindsay, who's a library professional with over 16 years of experience within the Australian higher education sector. Kathryn is currently leading the digitisation and collection management team at Monash University, and Kathryn oversees the teams that manage the library's Special Collections and Digitisation Centre while developing long-term digital preservation and access strategies. Kathryn's background includes over a decade at the University of Melbourne, where she managed the Digitisation Centre in 2021 to 2022, and she previously managed liaison teams supporting science, engineering, and IT. So welcome everyone, and I'm going to pass over to my co-convener Carey now to give you what is iPRES and where was it?
Hello, everybody. So iPRES is the World Digital Preservation Conference, and every year it's held annually. Yes, sorry, I'm having a moment. And last year, for the first time in 15 years, it was held in the Southern Hemisphere. So normally it's very heavily weighted to the Northern Hemisphere, Europe, and the North Americas. So we were very, very lucky to have it close to home in Wellington in New Zealand. And I found that to be extremely good because we had a very, very strong representation from the Asia Pacific area and Australia. And it also meant that quite a few of us that normally would not be able to go to Europe to this conference were able to access the conference and meet and network and learn so much over the 5 days. I will confirm that Wellington is indeed windy, but we were very blessed with the weather. It didn't rain. We did, however, experience an earthquake, which shook my motel bed quite heavily, which was when you're from Newcastle, that's a bit unnerving. But it was a good week and the facilities were fantastic. The food was pretty good too. And we had an awesome conference dinner in the Parliament House of New Zealand, which was fantastic. So I learnt a lot, and I'm sure Bryony and Kathryn did too. So I'm going to hand over to them to tell you all about it. And Bryony's going first.
Thank you, Carey. All right, just bear with me, everyone, while I pull up these slides. Okay, looks good. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Briony Cavallaro, and I'm the Digital Archives Assistant at the State Library of New South Wales. And today I'll be focusing on a few of my favourite papers and a couple of the things I learnt when I was at iPRES 2025. But before I get started, I just wanted to begin by saying iPRES was, without a doubt, one of the biggest highlights of my career so far. I've never been in a room with so many people who just like get it. So I finally had an opportunity to speak with others who got just as excited about obsolete digital carriers and file format systems and emulation as I do. It was a gathering of community who were keen to share what they knew and also open to learning new things. There were sessions from people from all areas with digital preservation, and I even had the opportunity to speak on a panel about emulation and its application in memory institutions, which I'll touch on later. But I'm pretty excited to get started. So I wanted to talk firstly about my absolute favorite paper, Beyond the Image, Examining the Overlooked Variability in Floppy Disk Imaging Practices, written by Leontine Talboom from Cambridge University Library and Chris Knowles from the Churchill Archive Centre. So, for those unaware, disk imaging is the process of creating an exact replica of a storage device, capturing all of its data, including things like hidden and deleted files, system files, and configurations for the purpose of a backup, recovery, and even access. This paper discusses the disk imaging workflows and how they differ between memory institutions due to a variety of policies and resourcing and the kind of content that they have in their collections. Disk imaging is often considered to be a best practice for media like floppy disks, but this approach isn't a one-size-fits-all solution due to the sheer diversity between carriers. So for context, before the domination of companies like Apple and Microsoft, it was a bit of a wild west in computer world. And experienced practitioners recognize these complexities, but discussions about them remain limited to a small group of experts. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to briefly walk you through the 3 types of floppy disk imaging, just in case you didn't know them. It's the flex stream, the bit stream, and sector level imaging. Flex stream images record the magnetic changes on a disk, creating a very raw and detailed copy of the data. This method is useful for recovering unusual or non-standard disk formats. However, these files are much larger than the original and usually need additional processing before they can be used in software like emulators. And the image you see here on your screen is the capture of a flex stream image. Bitstream images are stored. There we go. Bitstream images store the low-level encoded bitstream of each track, thus the name. These have a significantly lower file size than FlexStream images, but still need further processing before they can be used by most emulators. Sector-level images can be derived from bitstream, and finally, the sector-level image store the data from the disk in logical sections, similar to how the computer normally reads files. They're very human-friendly. And unlike the others, they do not capture the disk's magnetic information, but they do provide a working copy of the disk's file system. This method is used to create disk images that are easy to access and run in emulators, and the data can often be read directly by humans, thus human-friendly. It's important to note that no single format is inherently superior, however, as they all have their purposes. The wide variety of disk formats, file systems, and computing environments worldwide, including the differences between the US-dominated systems and those in the UK, Japan, or Europe, require us to move beyond the standardized practices and consider local contexts. I believe that the State Library of New South Wales is in a unique position to research with systems and carriers were imported here and how notable Australians used them in the 1980s and 90s. In the paper, Leontine and Chris discussed why they chose their preferred disk images. Cambridge opting for Flux, whereas Churchill Archives opted more for Bitstream. And whereas we at the State Library prefer to capture sector-level images due to their endpoint and the accessibility of them. However, upon hearing Leontine's workflow and explanation as to why she chose to capture FluxStream images, we have since discussed within our team about adopting it into our workflow to assess the accuracy of floppy disk images, as Flux allows for the conversion and export of different disk image types. Incorporating this into future workflows may also lead to the recovery of previously failed floppy disks, which is really exciting. The next paper I wanted to talk about was one that I participated in. It was a panel titled Oz Easy in Practice, Emulation Use Cases from Australia, where I discussed the application of emulation in the library alongside Professor Melanie Sowell from Swinburne University, Sinden Moyer from Swinburne's Digital Heritage Lab, Ben Abbott from ACME, Sally O'Callaghan from National Archives, Beatrice Yang from the University of Melbourne, and Felipe Oliveres from the Art Gallery of New South Wales. AusEasy stands for the Australian Emulation as a Service Infrastructure, which is a program of research led by the Digital Preservation Services team at Yale University Library, with the support from OpenSLX and the Software Preservation Network. Easy can be accessed via a web browser and interact with born digital media emulated within pre-configured environments that can be shared across the network. I spoke about the thousands of carriers we have in our library's collection, including floppy disks, zip and jazz disks, mini disks, CDs, and DVDs, and how many of these rely on outdated software that no longer runs on modern computers, which makes providing access increasingly difficult. To address this, we joined the Easy community to explore how emulation could be used to recreate older computing system environments and how to support long-term access to the library's collection. The case study I used was our family history CD collection, which includes over 400 disks containing databases, records, specialized software. Many of these require installation programs to function, and so using Easy, I created a virtual environment running a Windows XP to test access. As an example, I ran the British Isles Vital Records Index, a 1998 database spread across 16 individual disks. Using emulation, I recreated the original software environment and was able to browse historical records exactly as the users would have when it was first released. Emulation allows us to customize environments by layering software and disk images and making it a powerful tool for accessing legacy digital materials. However, it also raises new challenges, such as ensuring that future researchers understand how to navigate old computer interfaces, as they may have not necessarily had experience using older systems. Beyond family history resources, we are also exploring emulation from other born digital archives, such as architecture and design collections that depend on specific programs and fonts. Tools like Easy not only expand access to these materials, but can also help demonstrate the importance of digital preservation within our own library. And after my talk, I was approached by Ewan Cochrane, who was part of the team that created the first pilot of Easy at Yale. And it was really surreal having our work at the library acknowledged and praised by one of Easy's creators, and to hear about his experiences with the initial pilot. Excuse me. During iPRES, I also learned that you didn't always have to share your wins either. But by sharing that when things go wrong can also provide valuable information for those following behind you. For example, in the lightning talk titled A Peek Behind the Firewall, Intranet Preservation at Monash University by Ali Haynes-Brandy, Ali spoke about the difficulties of archiving organizational intranets because they are subject to constant change and protected with measures like single sign-on. She spoke of the limitations of web archiving tools and how they struggle to overcome dynamic pages, security barriers, and complex permissions. And she also had a really amusing anecdote about trying to build her own custom URL scraper bot that somehow found its way out of Monash University's intranet and onto Google, and then proceeded to try and scrape the whole internet. And another paper I really loved was the Don't Discard the Past, Preserving Floppy Disk Knowledge for the Future. And the authors discussed the paradox that experts often don't realize, which is parts of their knowledge might be useful for others. I found this true in my own experience. During a workshop, I mentioned a shortcut I used in Droid, a file format identification tool that we use here at the library that saves me time in my daily workflows. I was worried it might sound obvious, but 2 digital archivists from Canada didn't know about this shortcut and thanked me afterwards. So thanks to me, Canadian files might be identified just a little bit faster now. I wanted to finish off my press with a special request from Kerry to show everyone my manicure I had done to celebrate iPRES. My inspiration came from the icons designed by Susan Kerr for the Apple Macintosh in the 1980s, and the colors for the pastel palette is in the default settings for Microsoft Paint. At first, I got it done just for something fun to celebrate being able to go to this conference that I've always wanted to attend. And it was done by my super talented friend and nail artist, Nu. But the mani unexpectedly kind of became a powerful networking tool. So people would approach me after seeing or hearing about my DigiPres nails, and it was a really, really effective icebreaker, and it allowed the conversation to flow naturally from there. So many people whose papers I had read or had looked up to heard that I had these Macintosh nails and came to me first. So I didn't feel like I needed to have introductions to meet people who I wanted to continue the conversation of digital preservation with. So I don't know, in future conferences, there's a tip for you. Maybe have something that's an icebreaker, especially if you want to, meet other like-minded people. And here's a couple more pictures from our week. Overall, however, I feel so inspired to work harder and to contribute more to this community, and I'm really looking forward to implement everything I've learned to benefit the library's Born Digital collections. So thank you.
Thanks, Briony. Your nails were such a talking point. They had to feature. I'm sorry, but they were
I'll switch
awesome.
back so everyone can keep looking at them.
So does anybody have any questions for Briony at all? Just drop them into the chat. Yes. Or you can think of them and we'll talk about them later. I've had some people that are having trouble by the look of it staying in the meeting. They keep dropping in and out. Okay. So while we wait for people to think of questions, Kathryn, would you like to tell us your experience, please?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Okay, hopefully people can see that okay.
Looks good, Kathryn.
Cool, excellent. Okay, hi everyone. My name's Kathryn Lindsay and I'm the Manager of Digitisation and Collection Management at Monash University in Victoria. As I join you today from Mount Waverley, where I live, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, the Bunurong people who are the saltwater or coast people of the Kulin Nation. I recognise that while Monash University campuses are located in different suburbs, we are connected by the ancient stories and waterways of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people with us today. So iPRES highlights. So I thought that I would share with you some highlights for me that happened outside of the classic conference sessions. And because we've only got a short time, I've included links in my slides, which I can share through Kerry in this group, so that hopefully you can follow things up yourselves and learn more about anything that piques your interest that I talk about. One of the things that was a highlight for me was attending the New Zealand Photographers of Cultural Collections Forum. So the forums for photographers and imaging professionals working across the GLAM sector in Aotearoa or New Zealand, in their work they photograph a really wide range of different cultural collections, from paintings through to scientific specimens, and some do the classic kind of flat copy digitisation and 3D scanning. The forum's a chance for them to get together and share knowledge and build professional networks, particularly face-to-face. And all iPRES attendees with an interest in photography of cultural heritage materials are welcome to join in. It was held at the National Library. I could only attend for half of the day, but saw many interesting presentations on digitisation projects. That was kind of the group shot at the end. You can see me down there, but these are a few of the presentations that stood out to me. One of them was called Gold That Doesn't Glitter by Melissa Irving from Te Papa, and you can see that's the slide there. So Melissa was tasked with photographing some books. I think they were of Indonesian puppets, and they had shiny, like glittery gold in them, but her challenge was trying to capture them so that the gold actually looked glittery and shiny. Then there was another presentation by Michael O'Neill, which is this one here. And Michael was talking about how at the museum they used to photograph things kind of in a classic way, either kind of with the objects oriented vertically or horizontally, but they've moved now to a style of photography where they try and look at how the objects would be used in real life, and orient the objects accordingly. I thought that was really interesting. Then there was another presentation that you can see here called Implementing Digitisation at Auckland University of Technology by Denise Bainan. And that was really interesting. You can see a detailed workflow. Denise really went into the details of like how to set up a digitisation workflow, which was very inspiring. And then this one down here was Digitising the South Island Moa Skeleton by Johan Joly from Te Papa. And he had boxes of bones and had to do 3D digitisation of each of the bones and then reassemble the skeleton like virtually into a consolidated like 3D model, which was really cool too. I was the only Australian, as far as I know, who attended the forum, and my key learning is I think there's a great opportunity for us in Australia to network with colleagues doing similar digitisation work in New Zealand. I've been talking to Michael O'Neill, who's the manager of collection imaging at the Museum of New Zealand, about the possibility of somehow including Australian digitisation professionals in future forums or other events. Possibly in combination with the Australasia Preserves Digitisation subgroup, which I organise with Anna Clatworthy from the University of Melbourne, but there could possibly be like some crossover meetings with this group if people are open to that. Another highlight was attending a tutorial, duct tape and downloads digital preservation on a budget. So this tutorial was one of several tutorials held on the first day of the conference, and this one that I went to was run by Gaia Resources, and they're a consultancy based in Perth that specialises in delivering technology solutions from the GLAM sector. I think it was a really good thing to attend on the first day of the conference. So in my role's pretty broad, so I'm not a digital preservation specialist. So this was a great crash course on digital preservation, and it featured that little cute floppy disk character, and they handed out stickers to us as well, which I've got on my laptop. But this session focused on open source tools that you can use for different components of digital preservation. And they also covered factors to consider when choosing a tool. So, for example, how long has the tool been around? What does the GitHub look like? Are there recent comments? Is it actively being worked on? Are there many forks? Is this version of the tool no longer really managed? There might be some other actively managed version. Are there issues listed? If there's lots of issues listed, it could mean that it's got like a really healthy community of users. And does the tool have a website? Not all tools will. And if it does have the website, that could have documentation, things like that on it. So I've listed the tools that they focused on. So the ones they focused on during the tutorial, I explained had a low barrier to entry, but it might not necessarily, like these might not be the tools that might suit your needs best. So they showed us really briefly how you use tools like ClamAV, that's an anti-malware toolkit, Droid, which I think Briony mentioned already today. So that's a tool developed by the National Archives UK to perform batch identification of file formats. Then they talked about Joe, Vera PDF and MediaConch for digital object validation. And then ImageMagick and VLC for normalization or transcoding. And then Bagger, that's a tool that kind of packages up metadata with files and checksums in a bag, in a bundle. And they also talked about storage. You can kind of see some of the screenshots that I've got there. They talked about all the different options, and you can see the floppy disk little guys holding like a little coin all the way to having a fat stack of cash. So it's like the cheapest options all the way through to robust cloud storage options like AWS or Azure and things like that. Yeah, so that was really interesting. Another thing that I did was joined a couple of tours, like along with the conference, they had visits to digitisation and photography studios. So the ones on the slide there that you can see, these are photographs of the tour at the photography studio at the Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa. So they talked through their equipment and different techniques they use. And I thought I'd just kind of point out a couple of kind of MacGyver type things they were doing. I was impressed because like they were saying, working in a museum, there'll be racks and stands and spare things lying around that they've managed to then use in their work. So you can see that kind of velvet thing on a stand behind me there. That was something that they created, and it's got a slit in the middle, and they can set up something that they're trying to shoot, and then you can put your camera through that slit in order to photograph the items. And then this board that you can see kind of behind people in the middle, that had like it was almost like an old-fashioned chalkboard with a kind of ledge on it, and they can prop things up on that like artworks in order to photograph them. They had some other rooms that aren't in these photographs where they do like kind of darkened rooms where they do other photography. And then the other one that blew my mind away, my jaw dropped when I saw it, was the brand new digitisation studio at the National Library and Archives. It is massive. If you ever get a chance to visit it, definitely take the opportunity to. It wasn't really being used much, I think, yet when I visited it because it was so new. These are the shelves. You can see kind of like the volume when it was designed, like what they're intending to do there, because those are the shelves for kind of collection materials. I asked, what are these little kind of like bars across the shelves for? And they said, that's for if there's an earthquake so that the items don't fall off the shelf. And it's like, things you don't think of usually. But they also have a digital preservation studio that you can see at the top left there. And I don't know whether you can make it out on your computer screens, but there were like old-fashioned Mac computers and things in there, which was exciting. But there was a conference presentation where they talked about the design of that digital preservation lab as well. But that was very impressive. Okay, where I've skipped backwards. So the other thing that was a highlight for me was talking to the vendors and also viewing the digital posters. At Monash University Library at the moment, we're currently investigating the possibility of purchasing a tool for digital preservation. So it's fantastic to have the opportunity to talk to vendors such as, you can see Tracy Broadhurst from Preservica in the photo down here, and also chatted to people from LibNova. We've got Recollect at the University of Melbourne Library. We implemented that last year with the archives, with Ali Brady, who was mentioned before, and Lucinda Davies. So it was good to get to chat to people from Recollect. Damn Smart, we outsource AV materials to Damn Smart for digitisation, and I'd never met the people who were there from Damn Smart before, so that was great to be able to meet them in person. But I put a link to the other sponsors here if you're interested. Another thing I wanted to mention was the DPC. If you haven't explored it yet and you're interested in learning more about digital preservation, the DPC website is a rich source of information on digital preservation. And Robin Wright, who's the head of Australasia and Asia Pacific for the DPC, also ran something called iPRES Radio, which I think was on every morning, and I didn't have time to listen to it because I was at the conference this time. But it's a great way to hear interviews with people who are attending the conference if you can't attend yourself, which will be me for future DPCs, I think, which are going to, for future iPRES conferences, which are going to be in Europe. They kind of had the list of the locations, I think, for the next 3 or so years at the end of this. And I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to go to Copenhagen or Dublin or wherever the other ones are going to be, but iPRES radio is a great option if you can't attend the conference in person. Which brings me to another highlight, which was the DPC Members Forum. So this ran on the Friday, and it was a networking event for Australasia, Asia Pacific members of the DPC, and that was at the National Library. I've just pulled out one discussion that was a highlight for me, which was called Strategies and Vocabularies for Audiovisual Digital Preservation. And the discussion was with Joe Weatherburn and the team at the National Film and Sound Archive. So they're exploring how digital preservation strategies intersect with the specific needs of audiovisual archives. So Jay explained they've got a digital preservation strategy, but their kind of tricky task is to make that actionable. And in order to do that, they need to have shared concepts and language to describe the kind of complex audiovisual objects that they're needing to preserve. And one of the examples they gave is on the slide here. So there's an Australian game, which some of you may have played, called Untitled Goose Game. And they're tasked with preserving that. And you might think, oh, well, that's straightforward. It's just, a game on a disc or whatever. But they explained that there's 14 different variations of the game. They've got an original soundtrack, 6 artifacts, including T-shirts, socks, and a pin. They've got a whole lot of documentation, including images, artworks, and developer documents, and 9 films, including trailers for various versions. So they were discussing how can you explain all the work that needs to go into preserving a digital, a complex set of digital items like that to other people in your organisation. I felt weird not mentioning any conference presentations in my presentation, so I pulled out one, which was a keynote, which was very inspiring, by Peter Lucas-Jones. He's described on the website as a visionary leader at the forefront of Maori language revitalisation through technology and media. And I've included a link to the keynote on the slide and a link to where you can watch all the keynotes on YouTube. But in his presentation, he explained the work that they're doing regarding like speech-to-text and text-to-speech systems and Indigenous language pronunciation modelling and preserving language. And yeah, I thought it was a very inspiring presentation. One last kind of fun thing, they opened the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa at night for people who were attending the conference, which was amazing because it was super quiet in there and we had the run of the museum ourselves. And there's many amazing exhibitions there. I've included links to some more information, but explore, definitely check it out if you get a chance to see that. And then here are some of the links to further information. I did manage to go to the WEDA workshop before the conference began, which was amazing. Some more links. So these are the links from the tutorial that I talked about, and that's a cable car that you can take in Wellington that goes up to the Botanic Gardens that I rode more than once, and it's got those lights inside, which is great. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and feel free to send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. That's me. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Kathryn. That was brilliant because it reminded me of a couple of things too. So, one of the exhibitors that was exhibiting sort of brings us a whole circle with storing data because they were burning data onto glass plates.
Yep.
And that's like a new storage thing that everyone was talking about, which was really quite amazing. And the other, yes, Sarah
Excuse me,
Bright.
Kerry, new storage from the 1880s and 90s.
Yeah,
And
exactly. It's
I've
like a
heard that
circle.
I've heard that going on as well, that I've got glass plates here and they're holding better than any slide, any
Yep.
negative, anything. They're beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
mine too.
mm,
And the other keynote speaker, which I really enjoyed as well as the language one, was the one of the uh, parliamentary ministers from the tiny little Pacific nation of Tuvalu.
mm,
And with global warming, Tuvalu will disappear first. It will flood and it will no longer exist. And so he talked to us about how you make a nation when they don't have any land, and you have to do that digitally. And that just opened up a whole like interesting can of worms about that. But the thing that I took away from it was their island is only like 10 kilometers long by about 2 kilometers wide. They have a very small population. It's under 10,000 people. Their biggest income comes from selling their domain name, which is .tv .tavali.tv, and he says he makes millions of dollars from it, which was amazing. So, one of the biggest challenges that we all have is how can we get to conferences now? Because these conferences are expensive. iPRES was about 800 to 900 Australian dollars just for the conference fee. Then you had to get to New Zealand and you had to get accommodation, etc. I myself was only lucky enough to go because I won a professional development grant. So if you're in New South Wales, I'll just see if I can share my screen because I do believe that it's up for grabs again. And I'm sure that some of the other states probably have a similar one. So it's called the Next Steps Professional Development Grant. And I just basically had to write why did I want to go and what was I going to do and how much it going to cost. And they gave me $5,000 to attend the conference. And then what I had to promise to do was to pass on learning. So I've since held 2 workshops on digital preservation with very basic tools, a bit like the workshop that Kathryn went to. So that's my giving back, and that's what they wanted me to do. So if you're in New South Wales, check that out. I think they're doing another round of it just now. And if you're not in New South Wales, check your state government because there might be another way that you can do it. And Briony has another way, but it's probably a bit more complicated, which is going to allow her to go to the next conference, which while I'm sharing my screen, I'll just show you their iPRES conference. So back in 2014, iPRES was in Melbourne, and since then, the closest it's come was Singapore at some point, I believe. But as you can see, it took nearly, well, 10 years to come back to the Southern Hemisphere. And as Kathryn or Bryony said, they're not coming back to the Southern Hemisphere for the next 5 to 6 years. I'm aiming for Prague myself, but we'll see how we go because I'll have to fund it myself. But yeah, so Bryony, did you want to come back and say about your fellowship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Kerry mentioned, I have been fortunate enough to find a way to fund another going to iPRES this year, which is being held in Copenhagen, Denmark at the end of September. And how I've managed to do that is a couple of weeks ago, I found out I won the George Alexander Foundation Fellowship. So, what that is, it's a $15,000 grant given to Australians aged between 18 to 35 who have unusual or specialized skills that cannot be taught in Australia. And so this funding goes towards research trips overseas to go visit the best of the best in your field. So in August and September, I'll be traveling mainly in the UK to visit a handful of different institutions, and I'll be finishing my trip in Copenhagen. So the fellowship itself is quite broad. I was one of 4 winners this year and the only one from New South Wales. And my other fellows are doing a variety of different research trips. So Genevieve is a fashion designer, Gracie's an architect, and Reese is a furniture maker. So it's a very broad, I think, fellowship. And so I'm also the second person they've ever given money to who specializes in computers. So I'll drop a link just to the website itself. So yeah, hopefully using this money and this grant, I'll be able to travel to Copenhagen to fulfill the requirements of the fellowship. The selection process was quite rigorous. I had to write up a proposal and answer a lot of questions, and then I was shortlisted. And from the shortlisted amount, I think I was one of 10 people shortlisted for an interview. And then I found out the following week that I was one of 4 people that they selected. So it's quite competitive. It's not the outcome I was expecting. It is my 3rd time having a go for it. So I'm not sure if they really liked my application or they just felt sorry for me. But I was successful. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be through the government. There are private research institutions, I believe, like out there that may have an appetite for sponsoring people interested in digital preservation. So yes, that was very exciting, and I really hope that I'm able to speak more about my experience once I'm back from my trip. Oh, I also got to write a huge report, which I'll be distributing to everyone once that's done at the end of of my travel.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about how I managed to go to iPRES in New Zealand just briefly. As you know, I work at a university in the library and budgets are very tight. So at the beginning of the year, I knew it was a long shot, and the answer would probably be no. We have to put in all most of our, big professional development requests at the beginning of the year, and they review all of them for all the library staff. And the answer was no for me going to iPRES, which I fully expected. Even though I'd said I'll fund my own flights and accommodation, the answer was still no, because, it's such a small budget. But then towards the end of the year, they had some money left over that they thought they were going to spend on something else that they didn't end up spending. And my manager said, "Can I have a quick meeting with you?" And I was like, "Oh, God, no, what's this about?" And it was like, "You can go to iPRES." And it was like, "Oh." So it's like, I feel like one strategy is a bit like Briony. It was like on the 3rd try. Even though the initial response might be no, there's been lots of PD things that I've thrown, my hat into the ring for, and there's been many no's, but you keep trying. And the reason why it was a yes, towards the end of the year as well, was because at that point my manager decided that they did want to explore options to acquire like a digital preservation tool for the library, and so they were sending me to look at the options that were available out there. So my advice is keep trying, keep asking. Even if the answer is no initially, it might turn into a yes later.
Yeah, that's great. I had an experience too with WikiCon. I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to go to Canberra in the middle of April. And it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And whilst it's not digital preservation per se, a lot of people there are doing that. But the open access side of things and hearing about ISIP to do with Wikipedia across the world. We'll be the first in Australia to have Indigenous protocols that can be shared with other countries. So that was very beneficial just to say again, let's have a go and see if I can get to go to that. And I've been in contact with people since, and it's really positive community. So one thing I want to suggest to you all today also, which isn't also very related, and I can put the link is One Lib, One Ref for 2026, which is Wikimedia's program that's coming up on just 15th of May to the 5th of June. As librarians, as a lot of you are, of course, I can read you is a global call to action with simple but powerful premise. Imagine a world where every librarian added just one more reference to Wikipedia. So it's a great community to be part of, always something to learn, and I'd encourage you all, if you a bit stuck doing what you do, or you take good photos, which I don't, but Wiki Commons is a great place to start, and then adding in to Wikipedia articles is super easy. But yeah, so not all to do with preservation. And I encourage other people too to go and look at the Digital Library Federation in the US. I was lucky again in 2017, which seems an age ago, to go on a job exchange there, and 600 people talking exactly what you had at your conference in New Zealand, and I was the only Australian. I don't think they actually understood my accent and my talk, but anyway, I had a brilliant time and I learnt heaps. And as you say, Briony, sometimes the most unusual things can connect people. I didn't have funky fingernails though. Thanks for your time, everybody, today with Kathryn and Briony. Are there any questions that we've got burning away? I had one only for Kathryn. That amazing new setup that's at Te Papa. Where are the staff on the seats, and how many are they hoping to populate that work with? It's brand new, I understand.
Yeah, so the brand new one, that was the combined digitisation centre. It was like shared between the National Library and the archives, and they're co-located now too. Yep. I think I had a picture of it in the slides and they took it out, but I think someone told me that the archives used to be located. Oh no, it was something to do with an earthquake had happened, and due to the earthquake, the archives had to move. And so now there's like a bridge between the two buildings and they're right next to each other. And so they have this shared digitisation.
Well, the earthquake is a good outcome in that instance.
Yeah. But they were saying that when it was designed, they thought they were going to have more staff. But I think there's been a restructure in the number of staff has reduced. I think there are way more staff than were in my photos. I was there at a weird time of day. I didn't do the official tour. Rebecca Rogers took me through after the Photographers of Cultural Collections Forum, just kind of took me around. So I think it was right at the end of the day, and most people had gone home. So that's why there's not many people in the photos. But yeah, it's very, very impressive.
It might have been our first or second, I can't remember now, Kerry, was a webinar about collaboration in Western Australia, and they had archives, museum, all of the libraries all working together in different specialties, and I think that has to be the way we do it. We can't all have a digitisation centre that's so beautiful, but we all have skill sets that are different and we can share, I think. Yeah, but that's my opinion. Sometimes there is budgets and people that put blocks in the way. Anyway, I will be quiet.
Are there any more questions from anybody? I found it
for the group.
Yep.
With the papers, I remember that the papers were available I think via the app, and I did download the conference app. But are the papers from the conference are available online anywhere now?
Yes, they are. I will pull up that link for you right now, Kathryn. Let me just see. I
Thank you.
have it saved because our team basically, like, once the papers were up, we all just kind of left each other alone just to read for a little bit, which is really nice because there's so much going on when you're there.
I tried to
Yeah.
watch, I tried to go back through the program, just so everybody knows when you get home, they give us, I think they gave us until the end of January to watch. Most of the papers and presentations were recorded. And I have to say that the sound and IT team were on point. The stress that they must have been in, my panel presentation, there were four of us on the stage. There were three of us from three different countries coming in, and there was a recording to be played. And I just cannot imagine as an IT person, like trying to make sure that all of that happened. Plus, we had microphones. So the scope for disaster to occur was very high, and yet for the most part, I think there was only one presentation I went to where there was a technical glitch. It was just superb. The people at the convention center were just absolutely amazing. It was also most disconcerting to get, like, the safety brief. By the way, in the case of an emergency, you can go over here, the toilets are here. By the way, when an earthquake occurs, please go to a pillar and hang on to it, or go underneath a desk and hide. Like, that's a next level. If I was like, should we be leaving now sometime soon? And my husband was obsessed. He had the app and he was telling me how many earthquakes were happening every single day. I'm just like, I don't need to know. Shush. Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got any questions, but we've got the links. Thank you. So, yeah, Jill, over to you to close up.
Well, thank you very much, Kathryn and Briony, for your great insights. And of course, Kerry, who was also there but not formally talking with us today. But I think long term, if we think of further questions, as Kathryn said, we can link up via LinkedIn or find each other somehow. But uh, if we've got 3 more webinars coming up this year, and so I encourage you, if you're an ALIA member, to join in and contribute and ask questions. And if you're not a member, afterwards, 1 month after, as I put in the chat, you can watch the things, and Kathryn and Briony's presentations as well will be there. But I think, thank you again. And Kerry, anything else? I think we're good
No,
for the hour.
it's so good. Thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you to Kathryn and Bryony for giving us presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you for
see you in a
having me.
couple of months, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.